Hello and welcome to Datum. This is episode 1 of season 4. Ravi, how are you doing?
I'm good. We're at season 4 now. Like going back to what was it when you're in your car recording one of the podcasts?
More to the point, when you came over and I forgot to hit the record button.
Yeah, exactly. The first episode, that was a lost tape. And we've got a second lost tape to add to that for 2021, right?
We do have a second lost tape. Oh, God, nightmare. So for context, for everyone listening, we actually recorded an episode just before Christmas. We did a whole year in review. It then took me about a month and a half to actually get to editing it. At which point I realized that my audio had some sort of feedback in it, and it was just impossible to edit the feedback
crackling,
out.
Just proper crackling.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, a really interesting theme of all my tech recently. All the audio issues seem to just be popping up. Really stable gear. Been using it for a while. Just
premium gear, I'd say, Tim.
Yeah, I know, exactly. I'm personally very disappointed with some of it, but I think it's to do with USB-C and USB hubs and all that jazz. So I now connect the mic directly into the Mac, and we get a nice clean audio. I won't talk to you soon. I have a backup recording for today. So
Excellent.
Exactly. So yeah, how are you?
I'm all right. It's we've got some dates lined up for when things are easing and phasing back to normality. Vaccines are going out, so I'm optimistic. But yeah, no, it's very much in the Groundhog Day stage of things.
Right.
It's been a busy start to the year, I think, for me especially, with work, which has been keeping me busy. Lots of football on. I mean, when you're working across 10 clubs and you've got 4 seasons kicking off simultaneously and so many competitions, it's lots going on.
Yeah, it's nice to still have some sport back. Actually, in the first lockdown, I remember no sport was going on because we didn't really know, and I think there's just nothing to watch. So, sport is a little bit of normality. At least we can sort of cheer on our F1 teams, our football teams, whatever you follow, and even cricket. I saw some scenes of cricket in India with what looked like very full on normal crowds. That was a very sort of bizarre sight to see.
Yeah, I've been following the Test cricket as well. It's been a good couple of series actually. I won't get too deep into it, but yeah, they've got 10% or 25% capacity in the stadiums. Only for cricket though. So the Mumbai FC team that the City Football Group have, they've not been able to have fans in. So it's quite
really
strange. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Is there any particular logic behind that, or is it just
no idea? No idea. Might be local government because, of course, India is quite big, and you've got state-led legislation as well as sort of government regulations. So,
all right, fair enough. Good.
How about you? How are things? I mean, obviously, with the little one.
Yeah, newborn and everything, just adjusting mostly. To be brutally honest, I think most of parenting is just about adjusting. There's no like if you ask most parents how they're doing, it's always coping or surviving or those kind of terms, right? But all really, really good, to be honest. Again, I'm really grateful that I think COVID hasn't affected me too much, and been able just to stay safe, family safe. So I haven't had any sort of immediate challenges per se. So that's good, and actually more time to be at home. So that's been good. More time to make videos as ever. So yeah, of course I'm quite chuffed about that. So yeah.
But yeah, no, because I mean, in the previous Lost Tape year, we did a little bit of a year in review, right? So, like, obviously, you've hit a fair few milestones recently, right? So you hit 10K subscribers, having kids, and then most recently became a Tableau Zen master. So big congratulations!
Oh God. Yeah, no, it's nice. It's nice to get the recognition, although you don't do it for that, it's a very interesting sort of program to be part of, and I very much think of it that way. I'm not a Zen master; I'm just part of the program. So that's sort of how I feel, and I'm looking forward to collaborating with other Zen masters and whatever they're doing, whatever endeavors they get up to. I think this obliges me to write a book. I was going to ask you why you haven't written one yet. So
yeah, right. Then it almost feels like a rite of passage, right? You get Zen, and then
it is starting to be.
Yeah, it's starting to be. 6 months later.
It's starting to be. I've got so many views on books. I don't know if it's just me, but yeah, I'll probably do a video a little at some point on why I make videos and don't write blogs. And I think my issue with books is I actually don't think they're accessible as they claim to be. And I know that sounds like a really bold claim, but I mean that in as much as accessibility in terms of consuming content and making it pleasurable and easy for people to do, and also in terms of who can actually afford to buy those
Right.
books and actually consume them, and
Because they
how
ain't
those
cheap,
books
right? Like
actually get out. Yeah, exactly. And the knowledge in them is often actually knowledge that's already on blogs, and often it's just been curated into one place. But I always say that if that's where the value is, then I think we need to strive to find better curation tools
yeah.
rather than putting it behind some sort of barrier, which is a book or something like that. So,
I
yeah.
think I largely agree. I think it's a book is a good aggregator, right? When you're thinking of
Right,
aggregating knowledge and
right.
compiling, almost like you've got a very specific audience in mind, or a very specific user or reader in mind,
Mm-hmm.
and you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
right, I'm building this for this set or subset of people, and it's going to allow them to have a one stop shop. Now, I think my fundamental issue with books is, I mean, it's a great thought experiment. I mean, I guess you own some and data viz books.
I do. I do. I've bought some.
Have
I
you ever
don't
read them?
consume them. I don't consume them in full. So it's weird. I have them. I have them. I have them either through association or uh, out of a sense of obligation, if that makes sense. Like, I am gonna have this book. I'm gonna use it. Everyone's talking rave about it, and when someone references it again, I will pull it out the shelf and I will use it.
Yeah.
But rarely do people reference them, and rarely do I look through them and I think, oh yeah, like that thing. My mind doesn't just think to open the book and go reference something. My mind is not the kind of person who consumes a book and then waits to deploy the knowledge. So I guess it doesn't suit me. But also I'm dyslexic, so a book is like the
Yeah,
worst thing
right.
you could possibly give me.
There's also the initial thing, right?
That
So
I do have a bias in that sense. So yeah, I've got to say that.
my sort of view is, I just feel bad because, like, obviously I've got a bunch of books on my bookshelf, and the only one I've really
Right.
truly read, almost cover to cover, not quite cover to cover,
Yeah.
is Cole Nussbaumer Netflix,
Right.
Storytelling with Data. It's easy to read, it's accessible, and most importantly, it's short. Because I just feel bad about, like, the books that are that thick. I'm sort of gesturing on the camera, which is useless on a podcast, right? But a thickish book about 200, 300, 400 pages, and it's
Right.
like packed with knowledge, and you just know the authors have spent so much time curating and editing and getting the wording just right.
Yeah.
But it's like, how many people truly are reading it cover to cover? And maybe I'm being cynical. There is an audience for this, and of course there is, because books sell. But I think there has to be a better way of doing it, and there has to be more of a
I
pull
agree.
towards the content that you
Yeah.
create in a book,
Yeah.
or even like
Yeah.
a collection.
Yeah.
But I don't think you can't. I don't think you should expect a book from me for a while, if
Me
at all.
neither. Me neither. Oh wait. Oh, for a while. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Me neither. I just think there's so, at least for me and what I do and what I like to do and I want to do. I look at the analytics from what I do, and everything I do is in some way measurable. I can actually tell you how many people watched a segment of a video and found it useful. And in terms of that feedback look of, if you're going to put content out into the community, where do you want to spend your time? You need those kind of small signals rather than just sort of putting air in the wind. Okay, sometimes you get lucky, you do something and it just takes off and everyone gets it, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But people always ask you, well, how much impact are you making on these things? And actually, I think for me, video, arguably blogs to an extent, if you really go into Google Analytics and you really actually sort of pay attention to that kind of stuff, maybe to an extent that. But to me, a video is just ticks so many boxes in terms of accessibility. Got YouTube who hosts the video for you. That is literally the biggest value of YouTube. Like, people don't understand how hard it is to put a video on the internet and then stream it to someone. Like, my Tableau Explainer has had nearly 200,000 views. Now, the hosting cost of that video to stream 200,000 plays of that video, I could not afford that. But YouTube can. And so that is just an amazing way of getting something out. And it takes care of even streaming it at shit quality, at great quality, all these different things. Like, it just handles all of that for free. And that is an amazing vessel for knowledge. So yeah, I really, really big appreciative of that. So yeah, I'll do a video on why I make videos. I think I'm making a video about how I make videos, but an important part of that is why. So I'll split that out into a second video. So yeah.
So the way that I share content is almost like blogs and maybe a couple of tweets. And 90% of the time my blog is for my benefit, or like just a reference point.
Yeah.
I've done a couple of pieces of Medium recently with that, which are just longer reads, but that's
Yeah.
more of the structured thought. And I think the key for me is you can read at your own leisure. You can control F a blog post, and it's indexed somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And it's the access for me, right? It's the access.
Yeah.
To your point, like it's not exclusive to the people that have the print copy.
Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, I think there's some challenges. I hope Salesforce can add some value to Tableau on this front. I saw the redesign of the community pages for Tableau. That was interesting and good. Although to your point, I've forgotten about it already. Like, I'm not going back there again. It's not like bookmarked anywhere. And
but I think the additional thing there is it's not really for you, right? Like you got to remember that a lot of the things that Tableau do now that operate at scale is not for us. For me and you who are somewhat plugged into the matrix, and arguably Tim, front 10 rows, right? Like we are that cheering 1% or 5% at the front of the conference, cheering on everything they do, right? Whereas the community page, and in fact some of the features, and we'll come on to this in a bit, are aimed and designed for the many, not the few, right? Like for the masses of people who see Tableau as a tool on their desktops. And ultimately for the salespeople of Tableau, right? So Tableau's one of their key selling points, of course, their community. It's one of the reasons Salesforce cited they purchased the product or the company. And for a long time there was like Big C, which is the community at large, and then the forums, right? And this sort of aggregates it together in a really nice way, I thought. So yeah.
I'd be interested to see. I'd really love that to become a hub. I'd love to see them reach out to, Makeover Monday and say, hey, can we create a space for you on the forum where people can actually take part as a community with Tableau Public fully integrated. You put your data source here and it's already in public, and all the visitors related to that Makeover Monday are tagged. That to me would be like a, next level, really smart way of 100%. Integrating it. Yeah.
To that point. Yeah. To that point, I've recently they showcased their data repository. I don't know if you heard about this. So this is Tableau sharing data sources ready to go for Tableau Online users. I think this goes back to your point of, what was it in the last podcast, maybe the one after the conference, we said the best experience for Tableau in the next 3 years will be Tableau Online, right? And the browser, this is almost edging towards that and giving you more carrot to be like, well, actually, maybe 100%. I should be using the browser. So
100%.
And I think you can translate that repository across the public, and you've got a data.world-esque experience where it's hosting and allowing for collaboration.
Yeah, I think
hosting and allowing for collaboration.
Yeah, the big step this year is Tableau just need to add those sort of last holding out points for features in the browser, and also a little bit more clarity about the journey from Tableau Server on-premise to Tableau Online, because that's not often been a path that's commonly discussed, right? But normally the discussion goes the other way, Tableau Online to Tableau Server, because online has always been the lesser citizen. But now going the other way, I think it actually poses more challenges, right? Because you get all these nasty inconsistencies of running Tableau Server on-prem, and somehow you have to put them into this actually quite well-oiled machine that is Tableau Online. I say well-oiled machine. Like, the thing is, someone was saying to me, oh, but you always get these status updates that it's down and so on and so forth. I was like, yeah, exactly. I know when it's down. In your organization, I bet you don't even know 1/10 of the time when your server is down, because why would you know about it? Why would they tell you about it? They're trying to build trust and faith. They're not going to be pinging you every single time the server goes down. Let you build a sort of weird perception. So I love the transparency that you actually know when Tableau Online is down and that you're not doing something silly. And you can go back and see a history of all the issues, what the issue was, actually really clear. The trust.tableau.com, that page gives really clear sort of guidance, at least, for why something broke or what is broken or what's not working, so that to me is, again, just another example of where the experience is better, even when things aren't going well.
I think we talked about this in again the Lost Tapes pod, but we talked about we didn't make any prediction for 2020, right? We looked back, and I think the only thing we said was things might be different if things go well this time next year. And that was in reference to you potentially moving to the States, right?
Right.
And that's not going to happen anytime soon.
That's not happening anytime soon at all.
So, and like what actually happened was I left the information lab. I moved on. And you had a kid and got
I had a
engaged.
kid, yeah.
So
I got engaged.
it's like,
yeah.
so it's like, well, yeah. I mean, we are in a very different place to where we were last year, but
We
I
are
think it's
very,
also a good
yeah.
place to almost start making predictions for 2021, so we can truly
Right.
look back and actually have some key checkpoints. So
Yeah.
you can start
yeah.
off like, what's your first prediction for what this year will be for data and tech? I guess is a good place to start.
Ah, man. I think the reckoning is here. Like,
The reckoning.
the reckoning. It was a really interesting discussion about whether analytics is a first-class function in a business context, or whether it's a second-class citizen amongst other things that happen in an enterprise context. And this is in the context of the discussion of Power BI being bundled in and amongst, lots of other Microsoft services, and where it sort of sits in that thing. Because in that world, I mean, at least from what I hear, I don't hear lots of Microsoft Power BI people being upset about that, right? They're quite happy that Power BI is part of this massive ecosystem. Whereas I think on the other side of the wall, people often talk about Tableau being like, oh, well, if you value the way that Power BI is bundled, then you don't take analytics seriously. And I was like, well, do businesses actually take it seriously? And that to me is like what I think this year is going to be about. That reckoning is coming, right? I think we're going to see businesses saying, yes, it's important, but actually the thing we do, the core of our business is this, and analytics is only a function that serves that. And the reckoning will be how that places things like Tableau or products like analytical tools and so on in context of other tools that companies buy, and the priority and preferences that those things decide.
Oh, this is hilarious. So you this is almost like you've given me my next controversial blog post, right? You like like why analytics doesn't matter, right? Like why analytics is a second class citizen. Because I think I'm of the opinion that it's almost like IT, right? Like you don't like, you can think of IT as a function, but we all use IT, right? Like we all use the services and the sort of net that and the provision that IT provide us in our organizations. Now, similarly, everyone uses analytics. It's just whether they are the coders, whether they're setting up the security services, how involved they are is dependent, right? So thinking of analytics as a second class citizen, it's like, well, you almost go back to the early 2010s where Tableau coming onto the scene is this punk rock, amazing garage band organization that's telling you, you know what? You don't need IT to do analytics. You shouldn't even be in their remit. You should be doing analytics yourself. Here's how we're going to help you set up a server under your desk so IT doesn't know about it. Here's us giving you access to these licenses and to Tableau Public to get involved. Like rebel against the man. And now we're at 2021, where it's A, part of a bigger behemoth called Salesforce, and B, that Tableau almost is going hat in hand to the same IT professionals that it pissed off by opening up holes for security issues, by telling them that IT isn't required to do analytics. And they're like, well, actually, we kind of care about what we do, because a lot of what we want to do is integrate analytics into the processes. And where do processes live? They live in IT. So I'm in this weird position where I'm almost being like, well, what Power BI and Microsoft do makes sense. It's so convenient. And when you're working at scale, convenience is so important, right? So if you're cobbling Tableau together, you and you're working within an environment that's got a bit of Microsoft and a couple of other specialist products, you want to be able to integrate all of your identification IT services into that, right? Like without having to create pipelines using APIs and using something like Zapier in between, or even Power Apps to just hook in some other things, right? So
I think that's something the Tableau leadership saw, because otherwise, why else would they push forward with the
for sure,
the Salesforce acquisition of Tableau? Like, Tableau could only have seen itself being stronger in and amongst a bigger ecosystem, and that by definition means that at least the placement of Tableau makes it something that serves a greater purpose, right? And I think there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with sort of that value judgment at all. It's fine for it to be a second-rate citizen. The difficult thing is, I think for too long we've built our Tableau infrastructures expecting the rest of the business world to build themselves around it. So here's Tableau. It runs on a
land and
server.
expand, baby. Land and expand.
we've built a server. Here's our infrastructure. Here's how it works. Here's an API to plug yourself into. By the way, can I do this? No, we do it this way. Can I do this? No, we do it this way. What about CI/CD pipelines? Can't do that. Okay, what about changing the setup of my server whilst it's on? No, sorry, you got to take it down, back up, restart. Okay, cool. All these things, and now suddenly that conversation has just changed. Suddenly, you're seeing Tableau explore more of the things they used to say no to, all of a sudden, because that is now the big requirement, especially from, guess what, competitors like Power BI and so on and so forth. So it's an interesting world. I always say I wish someone like AWS bought Tableau, only because you look at Power BI and look by Microsoft, who have Azure, and so you see a natural relationship with something like AWS and Tableau, because you don't have many. You do have lots of customers who use Microsoft and AWS cloud infrastructures, but if they're using Power BI, it's highly unlikely they're going to be using many of the database services that you find on AWS and so on and so forth, because they'll have invested in Azure most likely. And so that is a natural opportunity for Tableau to reach a new market of people through AWS. It's just an interesting thing. But that to me is like my big prediction. This year we start to see things either fall into place or start to get seriously challenged. And I think for us in this field, I think we as professionals in this community really have to be ready for this change. Yeah. Because it's coming to us, not the other way around. Like for a long while, we've gone to many parts of the businesses to say, hey, we can change the way you work, blah, blah, blah. And for me, now the conversations turn. Businesses coming to us asking us, why can't you do this? Why isn't this done? You told me this would be easy and great. Why am I still manually doing these things? How can I automate the steps? Sorry, you can't. Okay, great. All these challenges are going to come back to us, and we need to start getting very critical about how we appraise Tableau and the features they do and don't resolve. We can't get excited about new desktop features because that is one part of the story, but it's a very small part of the bigger story, which is about business integration.
Absolutely. And I think to that point, again, in the lost tapes, we talked about the Tableau viewer never getting any love, right?
Right. Yeah.
The majority of users at an organization, if you're enterprise wide, are going to be those 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 viewers. When was the last time Tableau had a flagship feature aimed at viewers? Never. Because it's always been server admins or desktop users, or niche use cases like the SAP connector that seems to always get some level of improvement.
Right.
And no one really knows what it is, right? It's like SAP HANA improvement.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm of the firm opinion, and I don't mean this in any sort of critical way, but I'm of the firm opinion that Tableau don't have a product for the Tableau viewer. It just happens to have a bunch of other features that are accessible to the viewer, but they're not products built for the viewer that start with a viewer's perspective of the world, right? Creator has a great time and experience with Tableau, because if you literally go on the pricing page and look at the matrix of features, and there are ticks across each column for Creator, Explorer, and Viewer. Now, many of the reasons you talk about Tableau are in the Creator and Explorer column. Yeah, none of them are in the Viewer column. So the thing you spend the most money on, is a thing that doesn't have any of the benefits that you currently spend money on Tableau on. Right? If you just take that license, I actually preferred the old model where it was a core-based license, and actually you could sell the features because it was one big sort of offering, right? But by going down the subscription route, I can very, very clearly ask, hey, I'm paying a lot of money for essentially a CMS.
What value is the $11 a month per user per month getting me, right? Like, what is that $11 figure, right?
And not just that, you say that, but actually if you look at a 4,000 person estate, it's not just $11. It's actually, what value am I getting for the majority of what I'm paying here, right? Because I hear you on all these features for the Creators and Explorer. They're great. Oh, I love it. But hey, hold on. I'm spending, 3,500 of my viewers right here. I'm paying $11
Economies of scale.
That is my biggest cost in this whole license. What are they getting? What additional value are they getting other than the improved quality of what people can build for them?
And I think customers are seeing that as well. Like I remember having conversations the last 18 months when I was at the Information Lab, where you almost start to see businesses tighten their belts and be like, we're spending a fair bit of money on Tableau. How much money do we get back? Like how are you like giving me the ROI of
Yeah.
the stuff you're doing. And that's kind of like a weird question to ask. Like, you don't really ask IT how much money do you save us. It's like we run
Yeah.
your organization. But to ask, if we're doing that comparison of analytics will become similar to IT in that wrapper around the organizations, it's tough. And analytics does get that thing because of the high cost nature of it. I think if that stigma and that stick off the back comes, that's where you'll see that development. I think my prediction for the year will be that you'll see, how to put this delicately, you'll see a lot of people having to grow up a bit, like grow out of wanting the thing and thinking it's for them, right? Like there's so much. I think, and I think this harks to a bigger point about the end users of analytics tools in 2021 versus 2011. The end users of the analytics tools in 2011 was Excel reports and PowerPoints, right? And ThinkCell. Do you remember ThinkCell? I don't know if you ever used it. Yeah. It's like the consumer was using tools like that, and there's been a massive boom. If you look back in 10 years, these tools, like if you look at old school enterprise BI products, they were really clunky, and people didn't really use them. And suddenly you've got this edge towards design, and there's so much creativity in the space. And the user base for these tools is so much bigger than it was when tools like Tableau were breaking into the market, and where they did have fans and tools were built for them. Now Tableau's almost grown up. It's got to that point where you're in high school now. You got to be a bit more cooler. You can't run around playing it in the playground. You have to almost you're thinking about who you are as a person and figuring out that identity. And I think Tableau's identity has shifted over the years, like in small steps, such as moving to subscription and then becoming part of the Salesforce ecosystem, the Ohana, the 360. And I think the next step will be trying to conserve this great asset of the community, continue to grow it, while also trying to explain to the old school, almost the generations of users of Tableau that, look, we're going to release a bunch of features and they won't be for you, right? Like that should be the saying, right? Because I think I don't know if we mentioned on the podcast, but the generations of Tableau users that you had, I think.
Right. Yeah.
I think you said the pre-8 crowd, which is you, old man Tim over here.
Old man. Careful.
So maybe 9 is a good example, right? So pre-LODs, right? So like I came in at 9, which is I had LOD. I didn't really have to deal with doing backflips with lookup calcs. So you had pre-9, which is your like OGs, right? And then you got pre-4, which are like the proper adopters.
Yeah.
But I think 9 is your first majority. Then you've got a gap to think 10.5. That's your second generation. Like 10 was the revamp. 10.5 gave you Hyper, I think.
Yeah.
And then the final sort of generation is a TSM, right? The 2019, 2018, 2, 3, and beyond.
Changing how this all works, and Linux and stuff coming into it as well. Yeah.
Right. And it's sort of, and with the move to Linux, you almost, again, you're pallying to the IT people that you pissed off at the early 2010 crowd, right? So you've got the new day of data, you've got TSM, and I think we said the final generation was Data Model Plus.
Right.
I don't know if you had any thoughts to add on to the generations of Tableau users and who they are today. I guess is a good pivot for you there.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh man, generations of Tableau users. Like, there's two ways of looking at this, right? There is the version you use and the way you learn to use it. Then there is another way of looking at it, which is from a user experience perspective, which is like, what do you actually use this for? And actually, in Tableau's journey, there've actually been new and different people using it throughout that journey. Like if you take your pre-10 crowd, the users there were described purely as the authors. You didn't have viewers as users of Tableau. Like I can't remember a time pre-10 where people consuming reports were considered in a grouping such as viewers, right? And so what was interesting about that is that you paid a price and you got what you got, and you only ever thought about it as a place where you create visualization is really good for sharing them. And then you have the introduction to subscription pricing and the death of core pricing. That really rocked, a few organizations because they really like the core pricing, right? And so that's the next generation. This is the post-core generation who, if I'm honest, have always been kicking and screaming at the change, right? they've never really enjoyed the change. They've really hated the pricing. And, that's when you started to hear about, compared to Power BI, this stuff's really expensive.
Add-ons.
Right? And, yeah, exactly. So that's like another generation of users that's kind of different from the first. It's more of like how we're describing the different phases of Tableau here. And then more recently, and I think I'm noticing this a lot more, maybe because I'm embedding myself more in the community and I'm making videos for people and I'm getting lots of feedback back. But I'm realizing that there is a massive divide between people who build using Tableau and the people who consume building Tableau. And I don't see as many people in the community who are passionate about purely consuming Tableau content. Does that make sense? I see all the passion when it comes to making. I see Tableau public. I see all the visits.
But they're artists,
I get it.
Tim.
I get it. I love it, and I see it, and I love it. And I couldn't be prouder to be part of that community. But what I don't see is the other side of that, which is like, okay, for everyone who they're building content for, coming out and saying, wow, this is great. And maybe that doesn't matter. Maybe they don't need to know that it was built using Tableau. And that's sort of part of the art. And that's part 100%. Of the greatness. But because we don't see that, we're missing this other generation of users who will never build anything in Tableau. That's why Ask Data exists. Let's explain data exists kind of for that people. And therefore, I wonder what their version of an analytics tool looks like. What does an analytics tool look like to someone who will never build a visualization, right? And that to me is the new generation of user. And that to me is, where this sort of whole thing is going.
That's such a great segue into dashboard lists. Right? Like,
right.
I think you're the two things you're missing there is the way that I envisage in the next 3 to 5 years, the consumer building, like that person building analytics, is through asking questions. Now, the issue, of course, is there's no data orientation training, to borrow Anna Casey's phrase, right? Data orientation is such a big thing that's missing. So similar to IT orientation when you join a new company, like you get to understand what systems they use and tools. There's no, here's the data we use and the data you have access to ask questions and find interesting nuggets to help our business grow, right? Towards our ethos. And that transparency doesn't exist per se.
Right.
But I think you're spot on in Tableau should be catering to those people, right? The people that don't need to know the difference between green and blue, that don't need to understand how to build an LOD, right? All they need to do is have the answer to the question when they have it. Like, it's that just-in-time point. And therefore, alongside that, the creators get to create and also excel, right? And I think the mid to older generation of Tableau users, the pre-20, the pre-2020 2018.1 version, 2018.3 rather, I'd say, those people just want lifestyle adjustments, right? They want their formatting. Like we want some better dashboarding tools. We want some some just things that help us be better, and then carry on helping out and expanding explain data and RC. I think that's the thing. But the trade-off is I don't see that bigger picture thinking from the older users, right? The core creators who are evangelizing Tableau in our community.
And to be honest, why would you? Like, they are creators. If you look at any other ecosystem,
it's hard to blame them, right?
Essentially, content creators, right? I hate to use the YouTube analogy, but we're going to go there. We've essentially got a content creator market, right? And the way content creators react is they build what consumers want, right? And so you've got to tackle this. If you're Tableau, what you've actually got to see this is an evolution of a diversification of your customer base, right?
Yeah.
You've met that sort of content creator audience and you've given them what they want, and they have a core of features that are really strong and capable. Now you simultaneously need to be developing the offering you have for your non-creator based people. It's funny they call them creators, right? Like, but by that analogy, like, what are you offering to your viewers that is like, I'd love to know a feature that a viewer has that a creator doesn't have. That's when you know you've actually built something for viewers specifically that a content creator has no need for, isn't asking for, but a viewer is absolutely asking. And I don't know what that feature is. Right. Yeah, exactly. You're right.
That's
Right,
perfect.
right,
It's a
right,
perfect
right,
example of
right,
one, right? Like a
right.
creator
Perfect.
absolutely
Yeah.
does not want you to export to PowerPoint, but a viewer loves it. They love it.
Absolutely, absolutely. But that's something that creator can do. What I really mean is, imagine if there was like a way of consuming Tableau that only viewers could access, that allowed them to go and do stuff. An interesting pricing model that I've come across, which is LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn has those different pricing, depends on what you're doing. Are you looking for a new job? Are you just interested in networking? Are you a
Are you recruiting?
salesperson or a recruiter, right? And based on which you select, it completely changes the sort of focus of where LinkedIn and what LinkedIn is going to be for you. And I'd love to see that sort of segmentation to the point where you actually have the viewer team fighting with the creator team to get like time into the product, right? Look at it that way.
I actually love that. I think the great part about that is stuff like ask data, explain data is not accessible to the creator. Like, if you don't want it, don't let me see it, right? Like, you then take that away because again, it's marketed to these people. Now, it's almost like Tableau's to shift its view of how do we convert viewers into explorers and explorers into creators, right? That if you ignore that hierarchy and just say these are three distinct users, suddenly it becomes way more viable.
And I'd love to see a model on Tableau server as well, where a viewer takes control of what they see rather than the current model, which is a creator explorer imposes a bunch of things on
100%.
you. That doesn't mean that doesn't mean that permissions and stuff go out the window. It stays the same. What you can see or can't see remains the same. It's just that as a viewer, you have the power now to articulate that in a much more organic way based on the fact you're not creating anything. Whereas at the moment, I think it's predominantly a creator-led experience, right?
So, somewhat you can see nuggets of that starting to creep through, right? You can see metrics.
Exactly.
Metrics is something like that where you create collections, templates,
spaces,
things that allow you
stuff,
to allow you to have your own home and your own curation of a homepage and experience, which is absolutely what you're looking for.
But I would then say this: I don't think Tableau Server is that place for all this stuff. I really don't. I just take 3 clients I'm working with right now. They go out of their way to get to Tableau. They have to stop what they're doing, right? Open up a browser tab, remember their little password because not all of them have SSO. Log in, find the folder, a project, then go look at the report, open another tab, and go back to what they were doing, right? It just nearly always breaks their flow if they want to try and do something. And so I would love an experience which doesn't lean on Tableau Server. I'd love Tableau to be really brave and say, look, we really believe in the core of our product. Like the way people can build visualizations is so powerful. Let's take those visualizations outside of the server and into new places, right? Give me an API where I can render a viz without needing to build it first in Tableau, right? Give me the capability to go and do something creative with the metadata of Tableau without first having to go and configure, all of this stuff. So your experience can start wherever you want.
And I think that talks about flow, right? Like your flow is when do you need it and how do you consume it? And this is where you almost get to the point of we're now at the point where everyone's realized that they won't be an aggregator.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. We talked about this 2 years ago, I think, in season 2, where we talked about the fact that every analytics provider is an analytics platform, right?
Yeah.
Where really the only true analytics platforms are AWS, Salesforce, Google, and Azure. That's it. No one else should even bother.
Ones,
No one else should even bother. But yeah, so if you're a tech startup or a new tech company, your objective should just be, how do I get grandfathered into one of these behemoths, right? And purely because you realize I want their breadth and the ability for them to reach Slack, to reach to reach Teams, to reach where people collaborate a lot easier, right? Wherever it ends up, it might even be a text message sent out using Twilio, right? What you want it to be able to do is hook in and push, right? And that's what you're aiming for. And I think once Tableau has understood that, and maybe being part of Salesforce, maybe they've done it, right? They've been grandfathered by Behemoth, and they're now part of a wider ecosystem. And now they can really start pulling apart their platform and saying, which bits do you want to keep and develop and really push on with?
Yeah.
And which do we want to double down on as part of our core offering?
Yeah. I think, and to add to that, I think we're also in the phase where Tableau can't continue to listen to its existing customers. And I know that sounds like a really stupid thing to say. I can hear
That's
like
kind of what I was saying earlier, right?
what, yeah, exactly. Like, what are you smoking, Tim? Like, and it's the reason is because we will ask for unreasonable things that don't make sense. We as customers can only look at the problems we face and ask for the solution to that, rather than looking beyond those problems and actually saying, what is the overarching problem here that we're all having, right? Is it actually a better CMS system for analytical content? Is that actually the solution? Instead of building server, let's just build that product that is just a CMS for analytical systems, and white label it and sell it to everyone, including Power BI people, and they can just embed everything in there, right? Maybe that's actually the product that viewers need, a better CMS system for analytical consumption, right?
Or just like a way to track what types of users you have, like a profile.
exactly. Like it's an interesting thing. Like if you were AWS, that's exactly what you'd build. You'd build a CMS system separate from the core system, separate from the permissioning system, and you'd sell each and every one of them as a product. That's basically the AWS model, right? And so, VizQL would be a product in the AWS platform, and the metadata API would be another product. And actually, if you look at it, the product that way, you might get more sort of traction in places where you haven't typically gotten traction. But yeah, go for it.
I think it comes back to Henry Ford's horses, right? Like if you wanted something faster, they'd ask for faster horses, right? Like they wouldn't imagine the car. And I think that goes to your point of, this is why you stop asking the front 10 rows like what they want, right? Like while they're the most plugged in, they're the most evangelical, they'll also just continue supporting no matter what. Like if Tableau did something, like me and you would still be like, yeah, but it's still amazing. I still loved working.
We still had fun. Like it's been such a fundamental part of our lives that and I say this when I talk to Tableau developers all the time. I always preface it by, look, I'm a consultant, so I see edge cases every day. And so when I come to you with a problem, don't treat them like they're the kind of issues that everyone sees every single day. I experience a higher than normal level of traffic of some of these issues because of what
due to the volume of usage.
Yeah, exactly. And in the same light, I think they also have to start, understanding we have a diverse customer base now. It's not what it used to be where we just had to bring in one kind of person. Now we have the IT professional who wants to integrate everything and make it really easy to develop and transform. We have the author who wants to be a creative, wants to build beautiful things, wants really powerful control over every single inch of what they build. Then we have the viewer who doesn't want to be disrupted, who wants to be in their flow of analysis wherever they are and all the time, right?
And they don't want to email someone for permission.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah. And then you also have the enterprise of that's the wrong word. Let's say the CIO, who's really keen to make sure information travels through his organization in a trusted and governed way. Yeah. And so he's operational like the data model. Yeah, he's interested in things like the data model, things like TSM. Like those are the different product owners now inside of the Tableau ecosystem. And I'd love Tableau to take sort of the Apple approach, which is to say, right, we see these groups. We're going to split our teams into solving problems for those dedicated groups. And then we'll bring our product back together again, having gone and created those problems, right?
Because I go back to a YouTube point, and not once have I ever thought, but how is a YouTube content creator going to deal with this new feature in YouTube, right? Like, I just go and watch YouTube, and that's what a viewer is. Literally what a viewer is. I go on, I answer my question, I get the thing I'm looking for, which is a compilation, like the 300th compilation of Vine compilations that I've seen that day.
Yeah.
Or it's a video, a trailer or something. But for a content creator, what they care about is, who are my users? How can I encourage them to come in? How do I tag things properly? Like, give me the ability to make quick edits on the fly, right? Like, and this is where you've got your split between what a creator wants and what a creator sees, and what a viewer sees and what a viewer wants.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually a beautiful example because
perfect example.
YouTube does do exactly that. If you only ever consume content on YouTube and you have 0 subscribers, your experience of YouTube is technically still great. Whereas if you're a content creator, you ask lots of tough questions about YouTube. You don't get the answer to all of them, but that's because the experience isn't built around you. It's built around viewers. It's built around making their experience good as well.
I also really like the question is, where do explorers fit in? Well, explorer fit in with when you want to join a live chat on YouTube, you can't comment until you've created a YouTube studio account, right? Like that's the step. There there's your hard barrier from being
Yeah.
a viewer to being an explorer. You're someone who's you're consuming plus one other thing.
Yeah.
Again, borrowing something that Francois said to me once.
Yeah. Like,
And that's what an
I see an
explorer is.
explorer. Yeah, exactly. An explorer is like a curator in some sense, but also
Contributor.
it's like a it's a contributor rather than creator. That's the best way to put it, actually. Like the person who edited your content, or the person who, you know, had one look at it before it went out to the real world. That's really actually who your explorer is. I love how we've basically just redefined like all the roles.
Oh yeah, 100%.
The title of the podcast: Tableau server roles redefined.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's an interesting thing. Like, it's actually a good segue onto this Gartner report that came out now a couple of weeks ago, right? That came out, and I have to always preface this by saying, look, I don't enjoy the body of what's in a Gartner report. What I do enjoy is the opportunity to talk about whether Tableau is meeting the needs of its customers or not. And whenever we have this discussion every year and people just focus so hard on the outcome of this report, like the only parallel I can draw to it is like the way the royal family is behaving right now. Like they keep saying, we're not going to be phased. We're not going to be phased by this thing. It doesn't exist in our world. We'll draw no comments, and, you know, all that kind of jazz. It's like, yes, no one's asking for your comment. It's just an opportunity to talk about what Tableau could be doing better, right? Yeah. And so that's where my focus is. I don't want to get drawn into this, positions and stuff like that, because I don't subscribe to that line of thought. What I do subscribe to is the Gartner report makes some statements about, you know, things that are strengths and weaknesses, and I think most of those are wrong. And I'd actually go as far as saying some of them are generous, right? Like very generous, as from my perspective. And so I'd love to talk about that. What do people think is generous? What do people think isn't on there that should be on there? As a community, let's build our own sort of analysis of this situation. And every year, I think, is a good time to do it. They're the only ones doing it, right? So we might as well take that opportunity and change the discussion a little bit.
My focus on Gartner is simple. It comes back to this thing I mentioned before. It's not for you, right? Like right. The people I see commenting and telling you that Gartner is irrelevant and we shouldn't really be caring about Gartner in the year of our Lord 2021 and all this stuff. Like it used to matter, now it doesn't. Look at these different things. I thought, well, okay, but it's not for you to matter. Like the thing you should be approaching it as is, I've been promoted into this weird position where I'm like, right, someone just said analytics to me and we should probably be doing it. We need a tool. Mm-hmm. Right. I need to find feedback. So you go to all the vendors and then you're like, well, every vendor is going to tell me they're better and they've got their compete statements. Okay. Well, I need an objective view. And then you search the internet and what you end up with is a industry leading market report named Gartner, which is cited by each vendor. You're like, well, actually, maybe these guys have an objective view.
Yeah.
It's so weird that a community of analytics professionals are complaining about analytics, right? Like, whilst it's probably more qualitative analysis, and I think that's the issue, right? Like, there's not really much apples to apples comparison, but it's impossible to do that because all of these products are geared and designed in different ways. So for me, the Gartner argument is a bit misled in that it shouldn't matter what the outcome is or where you are in this position. What should matter is this perspective what prospective customers think, right? Like,
yes,
are these conclusions valid when evaluating a product, right? Is this giving you a good helicopter view of being able to quickly understand the difference between QuickSight, Looker, Tableau, and Power BI? And the argument probably is yeah, right? Like, it doesn't need to mention the community. I mean, I think Gartner does, right? Like Gartner actually mentioned the Tableau community.
Yeah. We'll come to that in a second because I got bones to pick with some of these strengths and weaknesses. But yeah,
but like it does address by and large what the product is. Does it go into details about can you do a running total? No, because it doesn't matter. Like the people that are reading the Gartner report aren't the analysts, they're decision makers. And the decision makers care about what is going to give me the biggest catch-all solution that my organization can make the most out of.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, I'd go as far as saying there's no possible way 4 contributors could be possibly experts in all the products in a way that allows them to compare them. Unlike a car review where you can drive every single car, race it around the track, objectively measure it based on 20 or so metrics that every car owner knows about: MPG, speed, miles, but all those stuff is standardized across cars. Exactly. Whereas analytical products, they're not standardized because they're not all solving the same challenge in the same way. And
exactly.
so it's such a difficult thing. So going back to your point, you can only rely on what people say about it, and actually, generally speaking, the sentiment around it, right? And so that's where I think the report, to be fair to it, makes a decent attempt. It doesn't labor the point. It brings up certain characteristics and criteria for judging, which, to be honest, are quite general. They define how they see the market. You don't have to agree with it. No one's asking you to. It's just there for you to indulge. And if you don't like it, don't pay for it. It's as simple as that. But I'll say this: Tableau put it on their homepage, right? Tableau, Francois wrote a blog post championing and lauding all the strengths and weaknesses over the last decade of placement in it. So you also can't say it doesn't matter, because it does matter to Tableau. And so whilst it does matter to Tableau, I think it's valid to say, right, we're going to critique certain aspects of this. I'm not going to indulge critiquing Power BI. I never use Power BI, so I can't sit here and say, oh yeah, like why do Power BI users like this and stuff. Neither can I critique the position of anything, because you don't get the stats about what goes into the position. So let's just focus on Tableau, and let's see what it says about that, and move on, rather than just going around in these circles every year.
And the argument of like Microsoft and Power BI and Microsoft should have its own dot, it's just silly. Like
Salesforce.
I
Tableau
get the
shouldn't
point.
have its own thing then either, right?
Exactly.
Tableau is acquired by Salesforce, so I think it actually says Google Looker at the top, and I'd argue that yes, now it should say Salesforce, not Tableau. And someone said, Microsoft not a product. Yeah. Tableau is it's exactly the same reasoning with Tableau. I can't remember the exact tweet, but I was I was a little bit critical of it, because it's like, well, by that reckoning, like, where have you been for the last 2 years? Like,
it's the opposite question, right? Like
I think next year it'll just be Salesforce.
The question's being approached in a different way. So you said you had a couple of thoughts on the community mentioned there. So.
The interesting thing here is, if you go look at them, I'm just pulling it up here so I can get the exact wording correct. I don't want to get this wrong in any way. So they write a generally generous report. Actually, I think I say generous in the sense that I think it congratulates Tableau about a lot of things it does do well, and it's a very kind report. I don't mean generous as in they've given too much. Where I do think it's generous, it's going a bit too far, is some of the strengths. So they talk about analytics user experience. Although Tableau keeps adding new capabilities, it always maintains a sleek experience for users. Now, stop right there. Have you tried building a dashboard in Tableau? I'm sorry, generally speaking, I would agree with the statement. It does maintain a sleek experience for users. But if you actually go to the people who actually build these features, they would argue that it's missing a lot of formatting capabilities. And the next point, literally the next sentence, goes on to say, although visual-based exploration is highly commoditized in today's market, Tableau can still differentiate itself by offering an intuitive analytics experience with richer capabilities based on its patented VSQL engine. And
it's the best thing.
Yeah, and I'd say, okay, well, that's fine, but you need to continue developing it. It's actually, I can go into Google Data Studio today and build a dashboard faster than I can in Tableau. I literally draw the box, I put things where I want them, automatically aligns them, and boom, I've got a dashboard. How long does it take me to build each and every one of those sheets? Much longer. But the experience of putting it together is much, much better in so many other tools. And that's sort of the detail that's missed in this report. And the fact that it's highly commoditized as well should hint to Tableau that they need to start making sure that they continues to build in things that are unique to Tableau. Anytime you're in a field where you're kind of competing against something that's highly commoditized, it's basically a race to the bottom, isn't it? Who can build the best features at the lowest cost, and that becomes like a loss-leading exercise. And no one, especially Tableau, doesn't want to be in that. Tableau's always actually prided itself on its research, and loss-leading mentality isn't sort of the place you want to be, because things will just get copied. These are just features. They're not unique things about the product. So they can be copied. Customer enthusiasm. I saw this as like a backhanded compliment, if I'm honest. Like when buying Tableau, when has customer enthusiasm been placed on the table with a thud. Does that make sense? Like, like yes, I get the element of support. I get the element of support and TCA. Yeah, that all makes sense. But this point talks about many customers demonstrate a fan-like attitude towards Tableau, as evidenced by more than 145,000 people who attended its 2020 online customer user conference. Okay, I mean, that was an edge case. Like, it was the first online conference. It was free to everyone. So how do you really judge that, right? Tableau Public, a free platform, great, called out, love that. Has over 3 million interactive visualizations. How many of those are the long tail of vizzes that get published and don't get touched, and you wouldn't consider as a best practice of Tableau, right? A user experience focused design means that particularly for users and analyst roles, Tableau's offering is compelling and even enjoyable to use. This is all great, but when has that paragraph been the reason a company goes for Tableau over something else, right?
I think there's an element. There's an element of the vendor having, again, it's pure speculation here, but the vendor having some sort of inkling of like, what do you pride yourselves in? And Tableau 100% pride themselves in their customer enthusiasm. They 100% pride themselves in Tableau Public, right? Like these sound like things that Tableau themselves want to champion and have almost said to God, like this is what we're about, right? Like this is who we are.
Yeah.
And whilst I agree with
and
you,
it's reflected in the community.
Exactly. I think the fan-like community is simultaneously Tableau's greatest strength and biggest, not Achilles heel, but it can be such a potent force as a case against Tableau because of the almost blind faith. And I say that with the absolute utmost love, right? Because the community challenges, the community pushes, and the community definitely shares back feedback on Tableau. But what it also does is it's like it's when you find something that's quite cool and then you're like, have you not heard of that? It's so good. It's the best thing ever. Like, how do you not know about this? Do you even work in BI? And I think that's the tricky part. And I think going back to our earlier conversation, segmenting user types really will help change that perception, I think.
Yeah. And I don't know. It depends how you look at this. If you're looking at this to buy Tableau, honest to God, maybe I'm totally wrong on this, but I just want to hear from consumers and users, and not people who use the product, people who make the buying decision. I want to hear from them that customer enthusiasm is a reason they went with Tableau over something else, right? That's my only qualm with this point. If those people exist, and they are generally the people who make the purchasing decision, and this is a reason why they went with Tableau, perfect. I'd love to see
the caveat I would add. The caveat I would add to that is that person, I don't want to say cannot or should. I'd rather say should not be in that front 5 rows, right? Like it should be someone who's almost
it goes without
that
saying.
decision
I don't think
maker
anyone is
with growth.
Right. Like, I don't know how to sort of put it tactfully, but in essence, it doesn't matter where you sit in the conference. If I'm honest, actually, just demonstrate that enthusiasm in the community is a reason you went with one product over the other. For creators, I can see that. For you and me, I can see why we'd go with Tableau, of course.
Absolutely.
But for person who makes a buying decision, I'd love to see this be a reason, a main reason, as Gartner have put us on here, which is my issue with it, which is I think that is a reason to be part of the community. I think that is a reason to be not worried about your TCO and not worry about things like training and not worry about support, because you can see there's an active community. That means they're going to develop the product, it's going to keep it fresh, all of that stuff. Like an active community is often the sign of a well-maintained product, but it's not the reason you buy something, right?
Yeah.
I mean, again, I'm happy to be proved wrong.
And every time I mention this, like first 5-10 rows, I always have to caveat, like I'm part of that. Like I am 100%.
Yeah, we are
that cheering person who's right. Exactly, we're both part of that cheering crowd of people who are so enthusiastic about Tableau that whilst we can give some level of objective judgment, there's going to be bias, right? Like
of course. Yeah.
As much as I'm like fully appreciative,
for sake.
Right. As much as fully appreciative of the Microsoft stack and what it is and how it's competing, it's also like I'm always going to say Tableau is the better tool because it's so good and I enjoy using it so much. So it's yeah, yeah. I think finding those people who are making decisions and seeing what was the thing that swayed them ultimately for or against Tableau is hard.
Yeah.
And again, if Gartner's the people that are able to do that and get that feedback, then fair enough.
Yeah, exactly. We've got 2 more points on here. Actually, 3 more points. Salesforce is a point, pricing is a point, and not cloud native is a point. If I tackle sort of the easiest ones, not cloud native, I think everyone knows that.
Yeah.
It's strange because they work with they're now owned by a company that is, SaaS-based company that runs mostly on cloud technology, AWS. So I think that's an interesting transition. They're going to have to become better at it anyway. Tableau Online is the closest thing to that. And I think that's, again, why you'll see that become really big this year. They'll add more and more capability into that offering, especially through the browser. So that will be interesting. Premium pricing, again, I can't really talk to this other than the discussion that we had before about Viewer not really having a product. That maybe is what makes Tableau feel premium, right? Because I'd also add on to that
the add-ons. Like, right,
they're
the
not
add-ons,
cheap.
And I feel
Data
like
management add-on.
It's hard to justify the value add and the ROI for
Tableau
those in
would
particular.
say they're not add-ons. I went through a training session a while back, and the general consensus is don't think of these as add-ons. I can't remember the exact.
What am I meant to think of myself as?
Direction. I know they're called add-ons, but basically the approach was that, look, if you think of them as add-on, then you don't value the things that those things produce, right?
Yeah.
And that is true for some organizations, but also it also touches on this point that actually Tableau have trained their customers to expect everything bundled into a single price over the years, right?
Yep.
Just 100%. So suddenly you turn up and now you have a subscription, nice and great. Then you start telling people, actually, you don't get everything you need with that price. It starts to sort of, become really, really difficult, actually, because again, usual behavior is that you got everything with your license. You never had to. There were no bundles. No such thing. And more is being added into the bundle. And it can feel, for someone who's been using Tableau for the last decade, it's a little bit of a shocker. But if you're new to Tableau, you won't know, and therefore, it's not a new thing to you. Integration challenges with Salesforce. Man, Salesforce. So it's both a strength and a weakness. So the first one is Salesforce Opportunity. The Tableau Viz Lightning Web Component offers, it's a little plugin for Salesforce. Honestly, it's not.
Bit on like Roku or Heroku.
Yeah, like I don't know why this made it into this thing, and maybe it's one of your things where Tableau put it forward as like, something big they're working on. They see this sort of being really valuable to Salesforce customers, and that's fine. The deeper integration of MuleSoft data connector capabilities and newly acquired Slack collaboration tool means that Salesforce clients have a strengthening set of reasons to consider Tableau. Well, this point is about Tableau, not Salesforce. So what I'd argue is like, these are all great for Salesforce users who happen to have Tableau. But what about Tableau users who don't have Salesforce? Like, where is the strength here? And yeah, you'd argue there isn't any other than actually a weakness, which is the integration challenges. It's actually taking Salesforce surprisingly long to integrate some of the more basic aspects of Salesforce into Tableau. Very simple one I butt my head against in like every month is that in desktop and prep, they don't read data from the APIs in the same way. So field name in desktop is called something entirely different to what it's called in prep, which makes it an absolute nightmare when you built a solution before prep supported Salesforce connection, and then now you're having to port those to run in prep. It's just, oh man, it's just not a pretty world at all. So, and I also would argue that we've seen a lot of value from Tableau go over to Salesforce, which makes sense. That's why they acquired them. I'm not sure we've seen yet that sort of, next level value that Salesforce is offering to Tableau users who don't have Salesforce, right? I don't know what that number is. I'd love to know what percentage of Tableau customers use Salesforce today. And if that number is over 60%, then this is totally the right thing for Tableau to be doing, building more and more Salesforce integration. But if it's not, it's a very risky strategy, because more and more, if you look at 2021.1, the first like 3 features are Salesforce features. So I just skip right past those because I don't use Salesforce on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be an interesting sort of dynamic to see how that evolves over the next 2 years, because I don't think it'll take a year.
I think it's also a natural point for Gartner to mention it, right? Like they have to, right? They're owned by by Big Daddy Benioff. So what you end up doing is you have to mention that as a fact, right? So
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, interesting group of challenges. I think we should do like the analysts quadrant, right? Where we get professionals from each product to talk about the strengths and weaknesses they see in their product. But that is it. You're not judging, like a Power BI person isn't judging Tableau, and a Tableau person isn't judging, Power BI. You just get each of the users of the product talk about the strengths and weaknesses of their own respective products. And then you do like an aggregated view of what do people say about these things. There's a similar one in web development called Survey of JavaScript Developers, and they basically talk about JavaScript every single year, and then try and analyze what are people doing with JavaScript. This should still be the same thing. Maybe it's something we should do actually. Maybe I'll try and see if we can set it up with something. Yeah, exactly. Like, I think it's a huge effort. Huge effort. I think you'd have to nail down the survey and the question, but who knows? Maybe with enough runtime this year, we could do it by the end of the year. Trump Gartner to do it to their report in January. The end of year survey of analytics professionals, where you try and get people just to, that's not a bad idea.
I mean, you've got 10,000, 11,000 subscribers on YouTube.
Oh God, we start with Tableau first, I guess. That's what I can do. Maybe do like an annual survey and just say, hey, I'd really love to know your experience of using Tableau, and just come up with some solid questions. Something we should do. Think about it.
Absolutely.
Then do
hopefully not get
surveys.
usurped.
That I do.
Yeah. Give me some objective data, right?
Yes, exactly. So oh God,
amazing.
Absolute bumper bit of content there. Kind of covered some lost tapes, covered some new stuff for this year. It's season 4, so we're gonna try and get back into the regime. Ravi's now taking care of all scheduling, so I am no longer responsible for any late episodes or anything like that.
I'm basically the I'm the bosun, right?
You're the taskmaster.
I'm cracking the whip and
right.
Yeah,
exactly,
no, for sure.
exactly.
This year we're going to get back into analog. We're going to bring back a few people for that. Maybe even dig a bit deeper into some of the topics. I think one of the things that I'd like to talk about is data literacy. Like what's going on there? Like what is it? I think there's sort of the world reopening and the challenges that will face, and the changes as well. But as ever, like please let us know. Like tweet us, drop us a line. Always happy to listen and hear from you guys and get some feedback. So as ever, thank you for listening. Thank you for another year of the 200-ish people that tune in.
Love it.
And let's power through.
Okay, thanks for listening. You know where to find us. DatumPod on Twitter, datumpodcast.com is our website. So by all means, send us feedback on any of those platforms. We'd love to hear from you. And of course, we'll catch you in the next episode. Take it easy.
Nice one. Take care, everyone.